From friendly faces and crisp uniforms to free goodies with every fill-up, we're about to take you on a nostalgia-fueled journey through 13 gas station customs that'll have you looking at your local pump in a whole new light. Number 1. Full-service gas stations. Remember when pulling into a gas station felt like getting the royal treatment? Back in the 30s, 40s, and 50s, full service wasn't just a fancy option, it was the norm. As soon as you rolled up, a team of attendants in crisp uniforms would spring into action. They'd fill your tank, clean your windshield, and even check your oil without you having to lift a finger. It was like having your own pit crew. These attendants weren't just there to pump gas, they were part of the community. They'd ask about your family, comment on the weather, and maybe even share the latest town gossip. For many folks, a trip to the gas station was a social event, a chance to catch up and feel like a VIP, even if you were just driving the family sedan. Number 2. Glass gas pump globes. Picture this. You're cruising down a dark highway in the 1940s, your headlights barely cutting through the inky blackness. How on earth did folks know where to find gas? Enter the unsung heroes of the road, glass gas pump globes. These weren't just fancy decorations, folks. They were beacons of hope for weary travelers, guiding them to that sweet, sweet fuel. Now, you might think these glowing orbs were just pretty lights, but they were so much more. Brands like Texaco and Sinclair turned these globes into works of art. Remember how we talked about gas stations being social hubs? Well, these globes were like silent attendants, working 24/7 to catch your eye and pull you in. They came in all sorts of designs, from simple logos to intricate scenes that lit up the night. Number 3. Gasoline for less than 10 cents per gallon. Now, you might think those fancy gas pump globes were the biggest draw to filling stations back in the day. But hold on to your hat, because we're about to reveal the real reason folks couldn't get enough of the pump. Dirt cheap gas prices that'll make your jaw drop. Imagine pulling up to the pump in 1930 and seeing gas for just 10 cents a gallon. That's right, a dime. By 1950, it had only gone up to 27 cents. Sounds like pocket change, doesn't it? Well, it was more than that. It was the key that unlocked a whole new way of life for everyday Americans. With gas this cheap, suddenly road trips weren't just for the rich and famous. The average Joe could fill up his tank for less than $1 and hit the open road whenever the mood struck. This affordable fuel didn't just change how we drove. It changed how we lived, worked, and played. Number 4. Road maps for free. Remember how we talked about cheap gas fueling the American dream? Well, hold on to your steering wheel, because there's another forgotten treasure that had folks itching to hit the road. Picture this. You pull into a gas station, and along with that 27-cent gallon of gas, you get a colorful, detailed road map. For free. That's right. These paper passports to adventure were just waiting for you at every pump. Now, you might be thinking, big deal, we've got GPS now. But oh boy, these weren't just any old maps. They were works of art, packed with local landmarks, secret scenic routes, and even restaurant recommendations. It's like having a friendly local guide right in your glove compartment. And get this, major oil companies like Texaco and Gulf were behind these freebies. But why would they give away such valuable tools? Well, it turns out these maps were doing more than just showing you the way. They were shaping how Americans saw their country. Number 5. Uniformed gas attendants. Picture this. You're cruising down Route 66 in the 1950s, your gas gauge nudging empty. But instead of dread, you feel a flutter of excitement. Why? Because pulling into a gas station back then was like visiting an old friend. And the star of the show? Those smartly dressed attendants in crisp uniforms? These weren't just any old workers, folks. They were the friendly faces of the fuel world, decked out in snazzy caps and button-up shirts adorned with company logos. But here's the kicker. Their job was about way more than just pumping gas. These guys were trained customer service experts, ready to treat you like royalty the moment your tires hit their turf. We were trained to treat every customer like a guest in our home, one former attendant fondly recalled. Can you imagine? It's like having a personal butler for your car. They'd rush out to greet you, fill up your tank, clean your windshield, and even check your oil. All with a smile and a, "How's the family doing?" Number 6. Gas station giveaways. You thought those friendly attendants were the whole story? Well, hold on to your steering wheel because we're about to reveal the secret ingredient that turned gas stations into can't-miss destinations. Freebies! Yep, you heard that right. Back in the 30s, 40s, and 50s, filling up your tank wasn't just about getting gas. It was like hitting the jackpot every single time. Imagine pulling up to the pump and getting handed a shiny new toy car or a set of fancy glassware just for buying gas. It sounds too good to be true, but that's exactly what happened. Companies like Texaco and Gulf Oil weren't just selling fuel, they were dishing out memories with every gallon. These weren't random knickknacks either. We're talking carefully planned goodies that had folks mapping out their road trips based on which station had the best loot. Number 7. Manual gas pumps. You might think those freebies were the coolest part of old-school gas stations, but hold on to your hat. There's something even more fascinating that'll make you wish you could hop in a time machine. Remember those hand-cranked gas pumps? They weren't just tools, they were the heartbeat of every fill-up. Picture this. You pull up to the pump, and instead of pushing a button, the attendant starts working a big brass handle. It's like watching a strongman at the circus. But here's the kicker. Using these pumps was an art form. Attendants had to crank at just the right speed to avoid spills and get the perfect amount of gas. It was like a dance, with the pump's rhythmic click-clack as the music. Number 8. Service stations with mechanics. You've heard about the friendly faces and the freebies, but hold on to your dipstick, because we're about to reveal the real engine behind those old-school gas stations. The mechanics. Yep, you heard that right. Back in the day, filling up wasn't just about gas, it was about getting your whole car in tip-top shape. Picture this. You pull up with a rattling engine, and before you can say, "Check the oil," a grease-stained wizard in a uniform is popping your hood. These weren't just any old grease monkeys. They were part therapist, part magician, fixing everything from wonky carburetors to squeaky brakes. And get this, in the 1950s, a whopping 60% of gas stations had these fix-it-all heroes on staff. Number 9. Curbside gas stations. Now, you might think we've covered all the quirks of those old-school gas stations, but buckle up, because we're about to take a detour into something truly mind-boggling. Remember how gas stations today are usually on the outskirts of town, surrounded by acres of concrete? Well, back in the 1930s, filling up was a whole different ballgame. Picture this. You're strolling down Main Street, window shopping, when suddenly you spot a gas pump right there on the sidewalk. That's right, folks. Gas stations used to be smack dab in the middle of downtown, rubbing shoulders with diners and shops. It's like the whole town was one big pit stop. These curbside stations were compact little fuel oases, often decked out in sleek icebox designs with shiny porcelain panels. And let me tell you, they weren't just about gas. They were the beating heart of the community, where you could get your car fixed, catch up on gossip, and maybe even grab a bite to eat. Number 10. Local hangouts. Think gas stations were just for filling up your car? Think again. Back in the 30s, 40s, and 50s, these places were the beating heart of small-town America. Remember how we said they shaped our cities? Well, they shaped our social lives too. Picture this. You pull up to get gas, but instead of rushing in and out, you stick around. Why? Because everyone's there. From the town gossip to your favorite neighbor, the local gas station was the place to be. They had soda fountains where you could grab a cold drink on a hot day, and some even had small diners. Can you imagine catching up with friends over a burger while your car got a tune-up? These weren't just pit stops, they were community hubs. Need to know about the next town dance? Check the community board at the gas station. Want to hear the latest news? Just hang around long enough and you'd be in the loop. It's like Facebook, but with the smell of gasoline and the sound of air pumps in the background. Number 11. Oil can displays. Ever wonder why your grandpa's eyes light up when he talks about old gas stations? It's not just the cheap prices or friendly service. there's a hidden treasure trove of art you probably never knew about. We're talking about oil cans, folks. But these weren't just any old containers. Back in the 30s, 40s, and 50s, oil companies turned these everyday items into miniature masterpieces. Picture this. You walk into a gas station, and instead of boring plastic bottles, you're greeted by a rainbow of colorful cans with intricate designs. Companies like Texaco and Gulf Oil went all out, embossing their logos and creating eye-catching graphics that could rival any modern-day billboard. It was like having a little art gallery right there in the auto parts section. But here's the kicker. These cans weren't just pretty to look at. They were part of a genius marketing strategy. By making their oil cans stand out, companies hoped you'd remember their brand long after you left the station, and boy, did it work. People started collecting these cans, turning a simple lubricant into a must-have item. Number 12. Custom air pumps for tires. Ever wonder why checking your tire pressure used to be a stylish affair? Back in the 30s, 40s, and 50s, air pumps at gas stations weren't just functional gadgets, they were eye-catching attractions. These custom-designed beauties were like the supermodels of the forecourt, turning heads and making a routine task feel special. Picture this. You pull up to fill your tires, and instead of a bland metal box, you're greeted by a sleek, colorful work of art. These pumps were often designed to match the overall look of the station, creating a visual feast for customers. Some even sported the popular icebox style, with streamlined shapes and shiny porcelain panels that would make any modern designer jealous. But here's the kicker. These unique pumps weren't just pretty faces. They were built to last, using durable materials and enamel finishes that could stand up to the elements. It's like the gas companies decided, why settle for boring when we can make air pumps fabulous? And boy, did they succeed. Number 13. Hand-painted signs and advertisements. Ever wonder why gas stations used to catch your eye from blocks away? It wasn't just the shiny cars or the promise of cheap fuel. Back in the 30s, 40s, and 50s, filling stations were like art galleries on wheels, and the stars of the show, hand-painted signs that could make your jaw drop. These weren't your run-of-the-mill plastic banners. We're talking about vibrant masterpieces created by talented artists who turned every gas station into a unique landmark. Picture bold letters dancing across the signs, telling you all about the latest oil change special or advertising the best darn coffee in town. And the colors? They popped like fireworks on the 4th of July. These sign painters were like the local celebrities of their day. They'd perch on ladders, paintbrushes in hand, carefully crafting each curve and swirl. It wasn't just about slapping on some paint. These folks used techniques like airbrushing to create depth and dimension that could make a simple Texaco logo look like it was ready to leap off the sign.